laws of heaven and earth. Verse 30. Thus gave God to man the names of the stars and their seasons, and the seasons of the sun, moon, and earth. And the seer gave it to the king, and the king proclaimed the words thereof. And God gave man sacred days for feasts and rites and ceremonies, according to the times of the moon and stars he gave them. Verse 32. And the king, by commandment of God, caused the people to watch the stars and the moon and the sun, so they would know the sacred days. And the Lord said, I have days for planting, days for reaping, and days for sailing of ships, and days for male and females. By the stars in the firmament and by the moon's change shall man learn to know my times and seasons. Verse 34. So man took to learning from the stars, moon, and sun to assert the will of God. Verse 35. And nowhere in all the world prospered man in the Osirian philosophy as in Persia, and in Japheth or China. And chief of all were the Shephard kings. So these scriptures explain how the first Osirian system of government was established, the Sun Kingdom being the central kingdom, and kingdoms that are part of the central kingdom are called satellites or planets. And the chief ruler of the Sun Kingdom was called the Sun King or King of the Sun, and all other kingdoms or satellites paid tribute to the Sun King and his kingdom. And it also stated how times and seasons are applied by observing the sun, moon, and stars, particularly the moon cycles. As is stated, by the moon's change shall man learn to know my times and seasons, to know the will of God. And this is how you apply the sacred days, which are the Sabbath days, based off the moon cycles. And I explain this in my moon cycles documentaries. And it also stated that the Shepherd kings were the chief of this Osirian system. As is stated, nowhere in the world prospered man in the Osirian philosophy as in Persia, and chief were the Shepherd kings. Now this time period predates the first dynasties of Egypt by 7,000 years, and these Shepherd kings lived in the lands of Persia. It was here that the first Sun King was stationed. Now the Lord's 5th book, chapter 7, verse 1 through 3, it states, Great became the wisdom of man in that day, and his power and glory were greater than had ever been in all the world. He established mighty kingdoms and sub-kingdoms over the lands of China, which is Japheth, and Shem, which is India, and Persia, and Arabia. He excelled in building temples and palaces, and in all manner of invention, in fabric of linen, silk, wool, and fine leather, in writing books and tablets, in mathematics and laws, and reciprocities, in navigation, and in inland travel, in making thermometers and barometers, and magnetic needles, and telescopes and microscopes, and chemistry and botany. Verily did the philosophers of those days know the mysteries of heaven and earth. So here it states that man was advanced in technology, science, chemistry, and chief were the Shepherd kings, the Persians, in this field of knowledge. And this would be between 10,353 BC to 7,053 BC. This is when man prospered in the Osirian philosophy. Now the Lord's 5th book, chapter 6, verse 13 or 14, it states, In the time of Osiris, the Lord named the stars in heaven after the legendary names of gods and lords, and they taught not that man should worship them, but that he should learn their glories and majesty in the firmament. But man forgot the Creator because of the wonders of his works. Even to this day, man inclined to view as substantial and real things that are seen, and to reject the all-potent which is unseen. Now the Lord's 5th book, chapter 7, verse 4 through 14, it states, And man became no longer thankful to God and his lords, but man became conceited, saying, The gods are fools, all things are nature, and of growth. Man had become wise in spite of God and his lords. All things evolved to higher states. It is the natural order. Neither is there any all-person, Jehovah. He is void like the wind. Verse 6. And God saw the conceit of man, and he said, Behold, he that I have raised up turned against me. Now verily will I go away from man for a season, that he may learn wisdom. Behold, man shall also find that many of his fellows whom he raised up turn against him turn against himself. So the Lord departed out of the star chambers, and lo and behold, the places were filled by the spirits of the newly dead, who knew not the heavens above, nor the way of the Almighty. And man inquired of them thus, Behold, thou art now a spirit. Tell me, is there any God or Lord or Jehovah? Verse 9. And the spirit, desiring to flatter man, withal not knowing the heavenly kingdoms, answered, saying, Nah, there is no God, no Lord, no all-person Jehovah. So the kings issued edicts commanding the people to no longer worship God, nor Lord, nor Jehovah. Verse 11. But woe for the judgment of kings and queens, man having inherent worship in soul ceased indeed to worship God and his lords, and even Jehovah, but instead he took to worship the stars. Now the spirits manifesting in the temples advised one thing through one seer, and another through another, for they were of little knowledge, and wholly unorganized. So presently the kings took to war against one another, anarchy ensured, and man fell to destroying all the glories he had made. Verse 14. Thus again, after 3,000 years, man went down in darkness, again fell under the obsession of Jujurds, or spirits of darkness, and again became a barbarian for 300 years more. So here it shows the pattern of an arc cycle. Toward the ending of the cycle, man and angels descend back to a state of ignorance and war. As is stated, after 3,000 years, man went down into darkness and became barbaric for the last 300 years of the cycle, which would be 7,535 BC to 7,053 BC. So as the earth enters the 22nd arc, these are the conditions for the Etherian god of the 27 arc cycle. And with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings, and catch you on the next documentary called The Life, Death, and Resurrection of Zarathustra, the Lawgiver. Shalom.